Hey everyone, welcome to my Sunday live stream. I hope everyone's doing well. And today I have a special guest. Arianna Chen is her sort of her online presence name, but it's actually Arianna Cuccio. Hopefully I pronounced that right. I forgot to ask before we started, but uh, she was recently married, so she had her name changed. So Arianna Chen is actually her maiden name, but I'm sure she'll be updating her online presence here soon. But in any case, Ariana is really an up and coming photographer, relatively new to photography. She really hasn't been shooting that long, but I found a lot of things about her photography and her presence online that I think really is a reflection of a side of photography that a lot of us ignore sometimes. Especially older photographers like myself. You know, we don't look to Instagram and Facebook. We're not big social media type people. We just like to go out and enjoy the craft. But photography has definitely expanded in the last few years, definitely to this push towards social media and sharing your images and your experiences online. Unlike the old days when we used to just print everything and albums and stuff. So I wanted to get her perspective, a fresh perspective on photography, an area that I think a lot of us haven't really looked into or have embraced, right? And maybe we should. We don't have to, but uh, that's something I definitely wanted to bring into the discussion. And what better way than to bring in a millennial, I guess, somebody relatively new and really getting into photography and see her perspective and what she thinks photography is for her, which would be a reflection on a lot of new photographers coming into the industry or into this hobby. Uh, so let me, without further ado, bring Ariana in, and we'll maybe do a little Q&A afterwards if you're interested. But I do have some questions I want to ask, and feel free to ask questions in the chat, but hold them off just for a little bit so I can get caught up. But Okay, so Ariana, let me see if I can make this work. Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure and an honor for me to have someone like yourself because, like I said, there's so many channels and photography and photographers out there that have tons and tons of experience, but sometimes I think it's really beneficial to bring in a fresh face, somebody new to photography and embracing photography as a younger person, as somebody starting out.
Mhm.
But I think you've really accomplished a lot in a little bit of time you've been online, at least, with your YouTube channel, your Instagram, your website, and your business. I understand it's really just something on the side right now that you're
Mhm.
getting picked up. You're
Yep.
starting to grow. Like most of us, we have a day job,
Yep.
but but photography is our passion, and I think you're very just a natural photographer, and it seemed like it came very intuitively to you. Um, but that's what I loved about it is you really show a very natural ability for photography and have embraced it and is sharing it online. And that's kind of the perspective I wanted to share with our viewers
Mhm.
and more, of course, and anything else you'd like to share. But just introduce yourself. I do have, and everyone, I do have links down below if you want to connect with her on her social media site, website, and YouTube channel. She has a lot of great videos. But why don't you tell us about yourself, what we should know about you, and why you love photography?
Yeah, so Rob, like you said exactly, I do have a full-time job. Photography is definitely a little bit of a hobby, or I say a little bit, where I spend a lot of my money, but it's something that definitely allows me to express myself creatively. Since I want to say the end of 2020, I decided to start sharing that photography journey on my YouTube. And so it's been definitely very, very fun to talk about gear, but also just to show kind of the beauty in everyday photo. That's kind of my big thing. I have my Instagram link down below in Rob's video. And yeah, so that's just kind of where I started. And from there, it's just going with the flow. I don't necessarily have an end goal in mind. It's just kind of what I am interested at that time. And it being a hobby is something that allows me to just go with it creatively and move where my creative juices kind of want me to go.
And that's the beauty of it is I, I really I really think there's a lot of people like yourself that enjoy photography, maybe just starting with their cell phone.
Yep.
Um, but what was your transition? How did you actually get started into what I would call real photography? But I don't want to,
Yes. Yeah, so funny enough that you mentioned it. I mean, I grew up with always having a smartphone around me ever since the age that my parents allowed me to have a phone. It was a smartphone where, you had the camera on there. So that's kind of where it started. I always had my dad was also a hobbyist photographer.
Hmm,
When I was growing up, my aunt got me into the Canon world. So it always was a little bit around me. Not really sure where the eye for composition came from. I don't know. Maybe it's just something that I was lucky enough to have. But it was always something that I think, being a sentimental person, that's where it really started and stemmed from me wanting to document things, me wanting to have memories for my kids the way my parents had their film printouts
hmm,
for me. So it was just one of those ways of documenting. And with social media, right, that became a big thing. Instead of having physical copies, you were able to just share things online and have that be your little memory album. So in high school, my aunt decided and encouraged me to get into real photography. And that's when I got my first DSLR. It was a big, clunky Canon Rebel series. And from there, I kind of figured out what I liked and what I didn't like. When I was able to afford my own camera, that's when I got my first Olympus camera, and that was the EM10. I wanted something small. I wanted something I could travel with. I wanted something I could hike with. And once I kind of went down that rabbit hole, I really that's when I started figuring out what I really liked and what I wanted to go down. And like I said, just going with the flow of where I kind of wanted to go at the time, that led me into film. That led me into, it's funny enough because I think like people of my parents' generation would laugh at the fact that we're going back to film and that we're going back to kind of the old school look where, we have such high quality technology now. And yet, for whatever reason, I love, again, the look of that sentimental feel of it. And so that's kind of the journey that I'm going down now. And I mean, as long as they keep making film and it's not ridiculously expensive, I see myself shooting that for a long time.
yeah, then that's the other thing that kind of surprised me is there's so many people just using their cell phones for digital photography.
Mhm.
But they're just capturing their moments, right? Memories or experiences that
Yep.
they're having. But it seemed like photography for you was about capturing a feeling,
Yes.
and that's why you love film because it makes the images just feel different to you somehow.
Yep.
And a lot of people they're trying to do these film simulations and they're trying to get that film look sometimes. But yeah, I don't think there's really any comparison to actual film.
Yep.
And you've somehow been able to that's connected with you emotionally, and that's how you share a lot of your images because a lot of your images on your Instagram and website are actually film, shot from
Hmm.
film.
Yep.
Um, and what was that like though? Because shooting a film camera,
Yes.
basically a manual process. I mean, did
Yes.
you take a class or you self-taught? What was your
So
sort of educational journey?
yeah, way back in the day when I was in, well, I guess for me, it's not that many years ago compared to other people. But when I was in high school, I did take a photography class and we did shoot film. That was kind of my first time shooting film. I had touched it. My parents always kept film in the fridge. But I had never actually used it or loaded a film camera or anything myself. And
Hmm.
I loved my photography teacher, but I did not quite remember anything that I learned in that class. So, fast forward 4 or 5 years when quarantine hit, like a lot of people, quarantine photography became their hobby. And so I decided, you know what? I love photography, but I need something to inspire me again. And I decided to go pick up a film camera. It's a low cost, and I decided it's a new challenge to try. So I picked up my OM10 and I watched so many YouTube videos on it, even from how to load the camera to how to take the film out, store it properly, and ship it to get to the film lab. Like that was oh my gosh, I was so nervous the first time I ever mailed my film out to get developed and scanned. But that was kind of my way of giving myself a little bit of a challenge to learn
Hmm.
how to shoot manual. And it definitely is a manual process. I will also say the OM10 makes it a little bit easier because it is aperture priority. So, it's one little less step, but it's still, that ability, like you said, to capture that feeling. Like if I were going for a hike, I put in my earphones, I play music, and I just slow down and, take the extra 10 to 20 seconds to set my settings and shoot the photo instead of just whipping out my iPhone. And at the end of it, instead of just a random image that I have stored in my phone, I have this whole series of memories attached to that photo that I took. And it might not mean anything to anyone else. It might just be a nice looking photo. But for me, I really, really enjoyed that entire process to get me to that point. There are rolls of film that I remember the feeling of getting back from vacation, taking it out, shipping it out, waiting for my scans to come in. And like all of those emotions and memories are attached to those 36 images, which is something that I really, really appreciated about the film process. And you
Yeah,
can't
and
replicate that, by shooting on your iPhone, as beautiful as iPhone images can be.
yeah, and that's the thing is, I for me, whoops, I gotta turn my phone down. For me, when I tell people that I can't use a phone for photography, just it. I'm a very tactile person, and I like
Yes,
how a
yeah,
camera feels in my hands,
yeah.
and uh, but I'm more I'm more interested in like when you go out and you shoot film, and like you said, you just love that experience, and it slows you
Mhm.
down. And people always say that, film slows you down and it makes you
Mhm.
look at
Mhm.
photography or look at the scene and enjoy the experience of being there without, just taking it for granted, right? You
Yes.
really want to capture that moment.
Yep.
But, film, you get 24, 36 shots. Are you finding it hard to finish a roll or does it go really
Yes.
fast? Yeah?
So, funny enough, I've had the same roll of film in my T2 for weeks now, which I at first typically didn't want to do. But um, one thing that I do notice very, very different from the way I shoot film and the way I even shoot on my phone is I'm so quick to take so many shots at a time on digital, whether that's my X Pro 2 or my phone, because I need to capture the right image. Whereas with film, I can capture one exposure and be so content with it. It's such a weird feeling. And I think it's funny enough because when I purchased a Contax G1 over the summer, and the camera was it didn't work. So whatever contact point, it might have been the lens, it might have been the body, it might have been exactly where they connected together. Something wasn't allowing the camera to focus properly. So I had this entire roll of exposures that were fully out of focus.
Hmm.
And I still to this day love those images. You can't tell what's going on in them. You don't know who the people are in them. I mean, you could see the outline of my dog maybe, but to me, I love the fact that that again comes with a story of it. And at the end of the day, I know exactly what memories I was trying to capture just by looking at these blurry images. So I think I don't want to say my standards are lower with film per se, but I think it's the sentiment of being able to, and again, I keep harping on this because that's really where the root of my photography stems from, is it's just a snapshot that allows me to trigger whatever emotions or stories I had behind that image. So now with film, and again,